Let it rip.
Let's do a Christmas song. Come down to the manger, see the little stranger, wrapped in swaddling, lo, the Prince of Peace. When the wheels start turning and the torches start burning, and behold, wise men journey from the east. How a little baby boy bring the people so much joy. Son of a carpenter, Mary carried the night. This must be Christmas, must be tonight.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live, and download our free app to your smartphone and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. Can't thank you enough for making us part of your day today. And for those of you just waking up and tuning in, Christmas was actually just 2 days ago. But that was one of the greatest Christmas covers of all time, December 17th, 1977, actually about 3 months before I was birthed. Rick Danko with a band of merry pranksters, including my guest, a Hall of Fame drummer, started his chops swinging a big band in the Navy big band, and wound up doing a huge amount of studio work, some mercurial, some very mainstream. He continues to inspire today rhythmically. My show has become about rhythm, and for most drummers, they understand that rhythm is an expression of love. Danny Seiwell, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you very much. You put a big smile on my face as soon as I heard Rick Danko.
And that's what I mean, Danko, I think was, when I interviewed the Hawk, Ronnie Hawkins, I think he was talking about him working in a butcher. He was a butcher, or his dad was a butcher. I mean, these guys were like the most blue-collar cats in the world. Like,
oh, yeah.
The emotion, even when they were hurting, I mean, I moved to tears. And I wanted you to talk about the first time that you genuinely connected on the bandstand, or even just in general with Danko.
Well, geez, I don't remember how that happened quite exactly, but I got a call. I got a call about. I don't remember how this happened, but I got a call to go over and rehearse with Rick Danko, and I'd kind of knew the band, of course, and my manager. I had a business manager named Gary Haber, who's no longer with us. He may have set that up. He was very close with Larry Samuels, who was the tour manager of the band and out of Shangri-La and all of that. So, I knew the guys vaguely, had been on several, been out to the studio and hung out a little bit with the guys, and Danko was putting together a solo thing, and he put the word out, I guess, maybe through the band people, and Gary heard about it and hooked me up with the audition. I went down and just freaked out. I mean, Rick was one of my most favorite cats of all times. I mean, we used to call him Bingo Biondo.
Because he
had such a...
Go ahead.
No, he had such a sense of humor, and he was so musical. I mean, I love bass players that sing their asses off. I hope you can say that on
no, this is we are streaming, but it's extraterrestrial, and there's no FCC regulation, so curse away.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, did he stop? There was a period. It was interesting to me, like in these. That was a live recording from the vault from the Capitol Theater, but he was playing guitar. He was not playing bass at that time.
Well, he played bass with us most of the time. There was there were a few tunes in the set where Terry Danko, his brother, would play bass and he would play guitar.
Right. That's okay. So that's
but
what
he played bass most of the time, kind of like Paul.
I wanted you to just talk about the idea of, in your mind, when you grew up, that before we had labels in music, I mean, nothing was described as like, there was no word for funk in the lexicon of music. That word didn't really come along until the 70s. Somebody might say, let's play a funky blues. And I'm talking more like in the Navy and even before that. What's your concept, or what was your concept of music in general? Because I come from the school of Duke Ellington, and at 39, I just feel like everything has been so stratified that it's choked off a lot of vocabulary in music. And I wanted you to talk about your concept of music in general.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, my dad was a big band drummer. My dad played with the Dorsey Brothers because they were from Lansford, Pennsylvania. And when they were getting their start, that was like 15, 20 miles from my place. And there weren't a lot of drummers in the area. And my dad played with them a couple of times. I guess he wasn't really hooked up with them. But and he had his crew around my little hometown. And I was told that when I was 3 years old, they used to play the big band shows up at a place called the Flagstaff in Jim Thorpe. And my dad used to take me along and set me up on the stage alongside him, and I'd watch him play, when I was 3. So at an early age, that kind of music really meant a lot to me, I guess. And when I was a kid, I was 7. I was enrolled in this boys' band thing, which was really cool because I got to play with kids my age. And they'd play marches and light concert pieces and what have you. And you would get a group lesson every week for like 75 cents or something like that. But I learned music then, and it wasn't in that high school. It was just music, band, orchestra, choir, the whole thing. My church, I was involved with the choir. If my life was just around music, I was really a crappy student. I flunked the 11th grade. I did not care about learning anything but music. And when I finally graduated, I got a music award.
I mean, you weren't really motivated for the academics. I mean, you were hooked. Would you say? I remember talking to the great drummer Dom Fumolaro, and he talked about this feeling that he looks at younger cats today, and this is, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but he just said, I don't see the calling that I had, that my generation, there was a calling. It was almost a tribal thing. Like it was something that was just in your blood. And do you feel like aside from the academics, because if you had applied yourself, you probably would have been a decent student. But can you just talk about that calling?
I knew from the time I was 9, I was destined to be a drummer. I didn't want anything else but no Ohio State football team for me. I didn't want to do anything but play the drums. Let me out of school so I can get a gig.
Right.
And when I was 13, my dad kind of stopped. He dropped out of the scene a little bit around my hometown, and people started calling me for little gigs, Saturday night at the Orioles Club or the Elks Lodge or one of those things. And so I was doing these little Saturday night gigs, all standards and actually some early rock and roll, shake, rattle, and roll, and standing on the corner watching all the girls go by, all this goofy stuff.
Wow, early rock and roll. So you were playing like songbook, American Songbook, mixed in with early Little Richard and that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah,
unbelievable!
In Vermont, Stardust, and all of the. So I was learning about music, Excuse me, I got a bit of a cold.
Yeah, it's fine, no problem.
And so it just went like that. They got me in the union when I was 13, and got me a special dispensation to get in before I was 16. So I was working a couple nights a week and going to school and working on a milk truck in the morning. Delivering milk. The guy would drop me off at school. I'd go in and sleep a little bit and go home. But it was all about music for me. And on the way home from school, the boys' band was the band hall was on my way home from school, and I would stop in. By the time I was 13, there was a guy named Professor Charles Frohnheiser. He had a pencil-thin mustache, and he was just a beautiful man. And he taught us all. He'd hammer on a metal chair with a drumstick to teach us how to play in time. You know, he would count it off, and then he would bang on this chair, and that was our lesson. And so after a while, I'd read every drum book that he had there, and he taught me to read music. And pretty soon he started letting me take an instrument home and learn how to play saxophone and clarinet and trumpet. And the trombone just baffled me, so I left that alone. But I had a saxophone and I had a trumpet, and I learned how to play some other instruments and played a little piano. So it was wonderful. My life it all revolved around music when I was a kid.
Denny, my question, the more I talk to, I've done so many primary source interviews, and I'm curious about, you talk about Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, a legendary athletic area, but I'm curious about Seiwell's, your exploration into the first time you would enter the ghetto, if you were attracted to the black music, because you talked to Barry Gold.
Let me tell you a story.
I want you to riff on this. Go ahead.
First of all, let me correct it. It's Seiwell. It's not Seiwell.
This is important. Denny, Seiwell. Thank you, Seiwell. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. But here I am in the Navy now. I got when I was in the Navy, I won the audition. I was either going to be sent to Vietnam and given a gun, or I could get into the Navy School of Music. I went to Washington, D.C. and auditioned, and they said that I had one of the highest audition scores they'd ever seen from one of those tough chiefs, Right, anyway, right. I got in, and I was in a cream of the crop band that they picked from music school and sent us to South America. So what happened there was, guys, we had a little band room where we hung out. And now here's where I'm starting to find out about John Coltrane and Miles Davis. Because my musical experience up to that point, being from a small town, I wasn't exposed to a lot of the bebop and all of the great jazz people that would later so influence me, But the guys we'd have a little record player in the band room, and they'd bring records on and stuff, and we would just sit around when we weren't playing for the troops, or doing a park concert or something. We would just sit around and listen to music. So I was exposed to all of these. There's 22 guys, I think, in that band. It was like a big band with a little couple extra for if we had to do a little concert situation. And, so now these guys are sharing their music with me, and I'm finding out some people that I haven't heard about, and I'm going crazy, listening to Red Garland and Jimmy Cobb and Wynton Kelly and
Elvin
Chambers. And Elvin, Elvin just blew my mind. I'll tell you a story about him later.
Yeah, please. So wait, would you say that it was a mixed out the Navy it was fully integrated at that point? So it was a mixed band at 22 cats. There was some black, all those cats. They were putting on all different. And that's where you got exposed to that.
Okay, so that was my first job, that South American tour. Then they sent me to Chicago. And while I was in Chicago, it was a 60-piece concert band. It was all black and white and all that stuff. But this trumpet player and we were stoned jazz heads. We found out where are there some places to play, in the ghetto, like you call it. Well, there was Jack's Subway Lounge, where they had a Monday night Blue Monday night jam session. And so every Monday, this guy named Bill Shields was his name. He was a trumpet player. We would go over there. We'd be the only white faces in this place. It was in North Chicago, I think. And we'd go in there, and you had to kind of meet the cats and sign up to get to play a set or a tune or something like that. And so I'm going in there, and this is a whole different ball game than the polite kind of music I've been accustomed to. This was down and dirty, and there were some brilliant musicians there. There was a guy named what's his name? There was a beautiful tenor player. There was he was like a young Coltrane, man.
It was like Vaughn Freeman or something.
George Cables, a piano player.
Cables was in Chicago at that time?
Well, yeah, or he was coming through, but I met him there.
George is a dear friend. This is unbelievable. What year was this, basically?
64.
64.
play. I'm hearing that. Dang, 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 dang. But swing the axes off. So now we have a piano player in this Navy, in the Great Lakes band named Lanny Hartley, who's out here in L.A. now. He's a beautiful, beautiful player. And all of a sudden, we heard about a situation where a jazz club was opening up in North Chicago underneath a liquor store in a shopping center, JD's Liquors or something like that. And they needed a house band. And so Bill Shields and I went in there and played with some cats. They got together. There was Little Jake from the Barrel of Blues. He owned a rib shop around the corner. And, some great players in the Chicago area. And the opening week, they had Nancy Wilson. They had Count Basie's big band. They had all kinds of people in there. And here I am in the house band. But I got to play with Lou Donaldson. And Lou Donaldson came in one of the first nights we were open. And here I am, I was 19, 20 years old, something like that. And I think I got it going, And Lou Donaldson kicks off a tune, and I get into my shit, I'm starting to play nice and trying to show what my wares are. I'm showing
absolutely.
How
you're trying to swing the band. Yeah.
And he looks around and gives me a dirty look, man. So after this, the tune stops, and he gets on the mic, and he shouts out to the audience. He goes, "Hey, Leroy, are you out there?" Well, Leroy was his drummer, unbeknownst to me, but Leroy was out there. He says, "Yeah, I'm here." He says, "Will you come up and get this white motherfucker off the drums?"
Dude, that's the meanest thing Lou Donaldson. I've interviewed Lou. He's one of the sweetest guys. I can't believe he said that. But actually, that's Chicago for you.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, I could have it wrong, but this is the way I remember it anyway. That's what it felt like anyway. So Leroy comes up and starts playing bang, 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 click, bang, bang, just shoving it up his butt. And I'm saying to myself, oh, that's what he wants. So the next night, when I went to work, Lou was there again. He turned around, he looked at me, and I would just stomp it off. And we became friends after that. Best lesson I've ever had, and I got it in the ghetto.
Did you?
I wouldn't really call it the ghetto.
Well, no, you know what it was? It was
ground.
Steve Swallow said that in New Haven he would go and there was no bad vibe or good vibe. It was just a vibe, and at the time it was where black music was played. But he wound up playing with some of the like T-Bone Walker and all these blues cat, and the blues and the jazz were right alongside each other at that time. And it to me, and it was, did you consider yourself, I guess, some people would come up to, sometimes people would come up to guys like Larry Klein when they were playing with Freddie Hubbard when he had the electric bass. This is more like the 70s, and he'd say, the vibe they'd get from some of these more traditionalists was like, you're not playing the real shit, meaning the bebop. And I just wasn't sure. I wanted you to talk about if you were a purist at a certain point, and if you ever, at some point, if there was a moment when if you lost that snobism, or were you always just open to everything?
I think I lost. Well, I never had the snobism. I really was open. I wanted to play any and all kinds of music. That experience in South America, we were exposed to samba and Brazilian music when we were down there in 1963, and this was before Stan got brought into America. So I was in northern Brazil, and the band got off the ship before anybody because we had to play concerts most of the time we were there. So they gave us some time off to run around and explore the city. And we were in was it Recife or San Salvador? It was northern Brazil, or Bahia, in other words.
Absolutely, man. Whew.
And we heard this music coming out of an alleyway. We walked down the alleyway, and it was a whorehouse, for Christ's sake, with a string door. Those colored strings that hang down for the door.
It was a brothel, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And there was a couple cats in there. One guy's playing a guitar, one guy's banging on a piano, one guy's just playing a hi-hat, and we said, what the hell is this? and I just spent as much time there as would allow, and so that opened my that samba. They called it bossa frevo, fast bossa, and it just freaked me out. So I always wanted to play all kinds of music because, it really. I knew that somewhere in the back of my head, I said, if I'm going to be a professional, I really have to have everything covered because I was classically trained. I played with small symphonies and concert bands and jazz groups and polka bands. For Christ's sake, I played with a polka band. I played with a country band named Shorty Long, who later became some underground icon, I guess you'd call it. I mean, just everything that came to me, I welcomed because I was experiencing some new music, And my snobism, I never had any snobism because when I went to New York City after the Navy, I was playing in the Poconos in a band up there run by Bob Newman. And on the weekends, they used to augment the band. It was a show band. You'd play singer, dance team, comedian, And on the weekends, they'd bring the cats up from New York to be Zoot Sims and Jerry Dodgen, and all these great players would come up and augment what we had, like a 5 to 7 piece band during the week. And if they have a big celebrity up there, like Jay Morgan or something, they'll bring the rest of the big band up. Good trumpet, Snooky Young, and they bring all kinds of great trumpet players.
This is unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Every once in a while, they'd get a small string section, even, depending on the act. But you had almost no rehearsal with these things. The book was scribbled all throughout from so many shows. You'd see like a set of eyeglasses. Watch out! There's a big tempo change coming here. All of this kind of stuff. And the hardest thing was the dance teams. You're playing you're playing Turkish music and all kinds of weird. And the music was all written, and we didn't have time to rehearse, so it was just like a talk through where they'd say, at letter C, it's going to go into 7/8 here, and and the tempo is going to pick up, and then you get out there and do it in front of 1,000 people in the showroom, So it was the best training ground that I ever had, I must say. And while I was doing that, this contractor from New York was called in to sub for a bass player one night. His name was Russ Savakis. And Russ heard me play, and he said, "Well, what are you doing up here? You come into the city, I'll get you some work in the studios." And that's how my studio thing began. And the best advice that he gave me was, he said, "When you come in with your ass through the door." I said, well, "What do you mean?" He says, leave all your chops out there. Come in knowing or exuding the fact that you can do the job. Just come in with a lot of confidence. Leave your chops at the door. Don't try to impress anybody. You're here to do a job. And it was great. Great advice, and in no time at all.
I just want to be clear. He said, "Leave your ass at the door." What did he say?
No, come in with your ass through the door.
Come in with your ass through the door, and just basically come in. So, because this album I've had forever, and I think there's a misprint on it, but this Lottie Golden album.
Oh yeah.
Okay, we're talking. I've interviewed Maynari. I've done several interviews with Brecker. I'm like, these are stone jazz. Of course, they were the studio cats, but was that the first studio gig you ever had, or was there one before that maybe you didn't get credit for?
Oh no, yeah, that was near the beginning, but no, I think my first record was J.J. Johnson and Kay Winding.
Get out of! Are you listed on the credits on that?
Sure, Betwixt and Between.
That's the name of the album?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to go pick that up immediately.
Roger,
this is unbelievable.
It was with Roger Kellaway.
Oh, my man.
Joe Beck played guitar.
Monster.
Monaco, my man, the bass player. We had a band, see.
Yeah, hold on. I want to back up for a minute here. DeMonico,
yeah.
I was having I know you love the Emil interview, but I was having the hardest time with Ray Neapolitan and Chuck Domenico. Both those are different cats. Okay, they were different.
DeMonico. Ray's one of my best friends today. We talk every other day. And Chuck
he's a private investigator now, right, or something like that.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
He was Joe Cocker's tour manager for over 20 years.
I need to get to Neapolitan. Anyway, so with DeMonico, okay, so I didn't mean to cut you out. DeMonico was on the East Coast at that time?
Yes. Well, Joe Beck, he was doing all these commercials. He had a lot of money, and he wanted to put a band together. He came out to, he brought me out to California. He talked to Roger and Chuck, and he wanted to have an experimental rock band. This is 1967, 68.
Wow.
And so the band was called The Pleasure Principle.
Oh, my God.
And it had Tom Scott, who was 19. So we got Tom Scott, Roger Kellaway, Joe Beck, Chuck DeMonico, and myself. Joe brought me out. I was just a new kid in town that had a lot of fire in him. And we came out here, we put the band together, and we would play the Lighthouse as the Joe Beck Quintet. Then we'd go over and play Dante's as the Roger Kellaway Quintet, and then we'd go play somewhere else. Then we'd play the Fillmore in San Francisco as the Pleasure Principle.
This is unbelievable. See, this is mine. Seiwell is blowing my mind. So wait, hold on for a second. Because Beck, I mean, I've done interviews with Richard Davis and Sanborn, and I was under the impression that, I mean, Beck had he was milking cows in upstate New York. You're telling me he was out in L.A. I didn't even know he went out to L.A. for a minute.
Oh, yeah. We were here for about, I don't know, a couple of months. 3 to 6 months, something like that.
Would you say it was because of the burgeoning psychedelic rock scene? And you wanted to get it. I mean, that's fascinating that you moved. That the band wouldn't have just stayed on the East Coast. That you actually moved.
No, he brought the band in for some reason or other. I don't know what. I don't know if he brought them in before we came to California or what. But while they were in town, we did some recording, and one of the things that we did in New York, over at Rudy Gelder's in Jersey there, that was that J.J. Winding album, Betwixt and Between.
Betwixt and Between. This is mind-blowing. So can you talk about what that was? So you went to Rudy, you went to Inglewood Cliffs, because those guys were massive. Those guys could burn, especially J.J. Those guys could really play. How did your drumming, how did you adapt to that particular session, if at all? I mean, to me, that is, I had no idea that was your first gig. Really, that's unbelievable.
Well, it's one of the early recordings, if not the first one. I probably have done a couple of demos before that, but that was an interesting time because jazz was kind of opening its wings a little bit, for lack of a better term, opening its wings to allow some of the pop music into the culture of jazz. So, if you listen to that record, there's obviously a lot of swing stuff, but there's beginnings of that boom, back, boom, boom, back. You know, that old the rock beat, the polite rock that was going on at the time was incorporating itself into the culture of jazz. And I think because we were experimenting with all of this stuff, and I think it was a perfect marriage. It turned out to be a big record for those guys. Unfortunately, it ended up in most elevators in the world, but it was a big selling record, and it was one of those early crossover records where modern day pop music was going into jazz, and nobody could say, well, this is selling out, this is stupid. It was good. It was quality music.
Why? Yeah, no, I wanted to get your opinion on this, as it relates to guys like Bird, the guys that always invented the music. You can just riff on this generally, but it seems like the guys that always developed new language in the music were they were so open to all kinds of music. So there was no the idea of, it wasn't about selling out. It was about, well, what do you have to say for yourself? I mean, they were very open-minded people, as opposed to sort of people that might have come in during the bebop years. I mean, really, jazz hasn't had a new language since bebop. It's time to move on from that. But the original masters, Louis, I don't want to leave anybody out. Bird, those guys were omnivores when it came to music, and that created this Dizzy as well. And that must have just been an infectious thing. But I got to go back to the pleasure principle because Larry Coryell was doing something, the Free Spirits. It was with a bunch. It was created. That was around '67. You had all these psychedelic rock bands, Janis, the Grateful Dead. You're telling me you went to the film? Do you remember the band lineup that was with? Was it like Tiny Tim and like the Preservation Hall Jazz Band? Like who was on the bill with you at the Fillmore?
Pacific Gas and Electric, Canned Heat, and us. I think.
Oh, that's ridiculous! Unbelievable.
And what's funny is, we rehearsed. We had this funky little studio down in Vermont and First in L.A. here, and we used to go down there and rehearse in the afternoon if the guys didn't have record dates or stuff. And we put together a set, and now we got this gig up at the Fillmore West. So what Roger wanted to do, Roger Kellaway, his whole thrill was to rent a truck and drive the gear up in a truck.
Yeah, see, this is so Kellaway, dude. I mean, it's come to the meadow.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, the guy is legendary, dude.
I'm sorry, but we were all tripping. We were all on mescaline. We were all, it was like, it was ridiculous. It was rose-colored glasses, man. And Roger.
And you were driving on this stuff. I mean, things must have just been liquid everywhere. It's unbelievable.
Oh, yeah, it was really wild. And DeMonico drove up with him just because DeMonico actually drove a truck in Chicago, so he knows, So Roger had no idea how to drive a damn truck, So we ran a truck, and I don't know. I don't remember how we went up, whether we flew up or what. But anyway, Roger and Chuck got in the truck and brought the gear up, and we were setting up the gear, and at the Fillmore there, and we're setting up. We're going to have a little sound check or something. Bill Graham comes flying out, and he says, "Hey, man, you can't play music. We got guys upstairs working. Besides, we have a basketball game going on here." So there was no sound check, and we didn't give a shit. Everybody played their asses off, and so we just waited till it was our turn and went up and killed, man.
And as far as you know, are there any recordings of the Pleasure Principle around? Was there ever a record made or anything like that, or is it just a band?
No, just a band.
Yeah, go ahead. Odd time singing.
No, this odd boom, bang, doo doo, boom, 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 bang, doo doo, ding. All of these tunes in 7/8, and like Tom Scott wrote a tune called "Gimme Liberty," and he sang on it.
Well, he was. I mean, dude, Tom Scott was channeling Coltrane at that time. I mean, he was on fire at that time. And it was Domenico, and
DeMonico.
It was so. But I just want to be clear. DeMonico he's left this earth, right? He's no longer with us.
No, he died when he was 59. Yeah.
But Neapolitan is still with us, right? I mean, I have gotten those guys confused forever. I mean, it has been vexing.
Well, they came out from Chicago in 1964. I think, I'm not sure if it was Ray or Chuck that came out. They came out at the same time. One came first though and said brought the other guy out. They were friends in Chicago, and just tore it up. Ray's still a wonderful bass player. He can still play, but the business got so terrible there in the 80s that he started a limousine company, and then he became Joe Cocker's tour manager, and he went around the world with Joe for over 20 years, and now he just plays to have a little fun, but he's a great guy.
So you're telling me he's not because people were playing joke and they said he was an undercover undercover agent or something like that.
Oh, no. And that might have been from that Chuck Barris thing. That Chuck Barris thing. He was doing the Gong Show for years. And then they made that movie about Chuck Barris actually being a CIA operative or some shit. What's it called?
Yeah, let me just, while you think about this, I just looked up this Betwixt and Between album. There's a tune on it called "Just a Funky Old Vegetable Bin," Bach Invention #1, Roger Kellaway. But listen to this. This lineup is astounding, and this is just when Seiwell was getting off the ground. Warren Smith, dear friend of the program, on tambourine. Airto played finger cymbal, drums. You played drums on it, and so did the legendary Idris Muhammad. known at that time as Leo Morris, Domenico, Russell George, and Chuck Rainey on bass. You had Stuart Schwarf, Gale, and Beck. Kellaway, another monster organ player, Charles Covington. Herbie played on it. Tony Studd.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I mean, who was I know the cat that found you and said, listen, just come to New York, I'll get you some work. But were some of these cats also coming to the Poconos, or did you really meet the Studio Sharks when you got to New York?
No, it's when I got into the city. What happened for me was Russ Savakis started calling me in on a few dates and stuff, but Dave Frischberg, you remember him?
Oh my God! I mean, just the man, dude.
Well, Dave and I were playing up in the Poconos. We had a trio, and he played with me at Mount Airy in the show band as well. So Dave said, "Hey, I hear that Mousy Alexander is leaving town. He's going on a tour with somebody. He was going out with somebody, but he had the house gig at the Half Note with Al Cohn and Zoot Sims." Dave said, go down to the Half Note Sunday night on your night off. Go down and sit in with the band. Maybe you can score the gig. So I said, all right. So I get my old Volvo and I drive into the city and I go down to the Half Note and I go up to Zoot and I say, hey man, Dave Frischberg says I should come down and say hello and maybe I can sit in and play with you guys. And he said, oh, Dave, yeah, sure, any friend of Dave's. He said, what do you play? I'm a drummer. He said, I hate drummers. That was my meeting with Zoot, So Zoot lets me sit in on a set, and I got hired. So I did that gig for a couple of years. It was 6 nights a week, 6 sets a night. Alan Zoot, Anita O'Day, Richie Kamuka, Bill Berry. I mean, it's just. But while I was there as a house drummer, all the cats would come down. And they'd want to see who's the new kid in town that's playing good. And so that's where I met Joe. Came down and he heard me. Joe Beck came down and heard me there, and then started. I became like, if Steve Gadd was there early on when I was there, he would have got it. But I became popular, and things took off. And pretty soon I started getting called for the straight studio dates, the jingles. Big 30-piece orchestras for singers and some film dates, and pretty soon I was in. And that's when my jazz career went away. This guy named Paul McCartney came to town.
Yeah, well, we'll get into that. I mean, we'll vet that. I want to get into that, but this is like. I just want to read you this quote because we're all over the place here, but I'll tell you who said it after, but this is a quote from a cat I did an interview with about 2 months ago. He said, and he was the tour manager. He said, we did a tour of Europe with Karen Dalton and Santana, Carlos.
Oh my God.
Bill Graham had Tower of Power about to go on the tour, but he liked Karen and pulled off Tower of Power and put Karen Dalton on the tour. Karen's band was Danny Seiwell, Harvey Brooks, Bill Keith, the man, rest in peace, and John Hall on lead guitar. We played the Monterey Pop Festival. There were thousands of people there, and she wasn't ready. I had the function of following her around and taking drinks from her hand, at which time she came up with the best name for me, Pig Fucker. Okay, so
was that Michael Lang?
The Marvin Grafton, the head of one of the
Marvin Grafton, Michael Lang's party.
Exactly, Just Sunshine, and I'm like, so I'm like, you were marinating in Woodstock. So I mean, that's my question. Once you're one of the cats, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but once you got into New York and you're playing with Brecker, Stam, Lottie Gold, you're doing all the studio work, then you realized that there was this regional scene that was really percolating in Woods. How did you wind up going to Woodstock?
It was a date. I got called. Radio registry said, hey, got a session for you from, I forget who it was, but I went up and we did the Karen Dalton album up there. And it was Harvey Brooks was on bass, and he might have been producing it. It was really a great record. There's a tune on that record called In a Station that I'll never forget.
Oh, my God, Richard Manuel. I'm listening to him just... in the station, man. You're rocking. Okay, continue on, please. Continue. This is on.
Yeah, it was just another studio call. I hated leaving town because I was going three to 5 sessions a day in town, but this sounded so rich. It really, John Hall on guitar and Harvey Brooks, and I love those cats. I got to work with them once in a while in the city, and when they said, yeah, we're doing this record, and I think Michael Lang was the one who talked me into it, because Michael and I were close friends. He actually, well, I think Karen Dalton came before, but we became close friends and went to Europe together with Karen in that band, and it was Michael and I would hang out. And Bill Keith, I didn't know that he'd passed.
I'm going to send you my interview with Bill, because he talked about coming back from the Fillmore West, and he stopping off at Earl Scruggs' house, and he had baked a bunch of pot brownies, and it's a great story. Earl ingested, so it was just, the whole time was beyond the pale. But yeah, Bill, cancer got him.
God,
yeah, no, I mean that.
Yeah.
So that
he was an amazing musician,
dude. Duke Ellington used to come see the Queskin Jug Band, and he freaked out when he saw the pedal steel and the ability.
Yeah.
He was, but yeah, I mean, so you did the album, but next thing you know, you're being talked.
I got to tell you.
Go ahead.
I got to tell you a quick funny story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Michael Lang, we're on tour with Karen Dalton, and we're in Amsterdam. Bill Keith's his pedal steel was wrapped in a rug. He didn't have a case for it, right? So we hand carried this puppy everywhere, and we're high as big dogs, of course, in those days. And we're getting on a flight in Amsterdam, and we get to the airport, and we're checking our gear in, and we say, "Holy shit, the pedal steel isn't here!" And so everybody starts freaking. Michael Lang and I jumped in a cab, went back to the center of town, found the cab that took us to the airport, and got the pedal steel out of the trunk and made it to the gig.
Wait, hold on. You got to the gate, and there was no pedal steel. And then where?
Yeah.
How did you find? Where was it?
It was in the trunk of the taxi that took us to the airport.
And Bill was as cool as the other side of the pillow. He wasn't that concerned about it, or he was.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, he was probably on something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, he told the funniest story about Earl Scruggs, because he came back through Texas from the Fillmore West, and Scruggs was like, yeah, the Avalon Ballroom was filled with marijuana smoke, and I don't smoke anymore. And Bill's like, well, actually, you don't have to smoke it; you can eat it. And so so Scruggs was like, oh, okay, I'll try one, And so his wife decided not to, but Earl had a pot brownie, and then maybe 45 minutes or an hour later, he's like, honey, the colors on the TV are changing. And she goes, Earl, the TV's in black and white. It was so beautiful. You brought up this tune. I want to play this tune for the audience listening worldwide. This is a tune recorded at Bearsville Studio. Seiwell didn't want to leave the city because he was marinating in jingles and commercials and sessions, but he made it up for the session, and we're sure glad he did. So let's listen to this, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Okay, great.
Station, someone called your name. In the street I heard children laughing. They all sound the same. Wonder, could you ever know me? Know the reason why I live? Is there nothing you can show me? while through there. Fell asleep until the moonlight woke me, dreaming I could touch her hair. Isn't everybody dreaming? Then the voice I hear is real. Out of all the idle scheming, and we have something to once upon a time leaves me empty. Tomorrow never came. I could hear the sound of your laughter. Still I don't know your name. Must be some way to repay you after all the good you gave. If a rumor should repay you, love seems so little to save. Oh, save me, save me.
Oh wow! I mean, burning. And not, to take nothing away from the version on Stage Fright, I actually think that version might be better.
Well, Karen was so unique. I mean, she backphrased. She was like a redneck Billie Holiday. She was so out there. I mean, she was this tall, skinny chick. She had missing teeth. She had a long neck banjo, a 6-pack of beer, a couple of dogs, and a pickup truck. You know.
It's amazing to me because that tour, it sounded like she was really, really a mess. Though it really didn't work out for her. And
she had an alcohol problem. She had a drinking problem.
Right. I'm producing a documentary. I'm producing a documentary on Stan Getz, and it's like the dude was a total sociopath and drug addict, and he was able to get up totally smashed out of his mind. Again, he wasn't singing, but so she just couldn't. She just couldn't handle it.
Well, I mean, we were opening for Santana too, and sometimes the audience would just be screaming, "We want Santana!" And we're up there playing all of this really. It was some funky shit that we were playing. It was really a soulful band, and a lot of times she'd have half a bag on before we went on, and she'd get out and she'd sing the song through. We'd get to the guitar solo, and she'd leave the stage, and we couldn't find her.
Right.
So
it was a
this
mess.
went on for a while, and I'll never forget. Actually, I shouldn't tell you that she's gone, but. We got to someplace, and maybe it was Amsterdam or someplace. In the hotel room was like a cigarette machine. It had these buttons on the top, but it wasn't a cigarette machine. It was like you put your room key in it, and if you turn the room key to the right and you press one of these buttons on top, an airplane-sized drink would fall out the bottom, a little bottle, a glass bottle.
Wow.
And inside the front was a mixer, some ice and stuff like that. So Karen didn't know that every time you put your key in there and you push one of these buttons for a drink, it registered on your bill down in the desk,
Yeah, it
So
was like a bar. It was
this
like, oh my God.
Yeah, she emptied this machine, and she had a drawer. She opened up the desk drawer in her room, and it was like full of these rolling bottles all around. And that was it. I mean, when she found that, she was like, for the most part, gone. And Michael Lang. We were all talking to each other, saying we can't do this anymore. She's really brilliant, unique artist, and we're doing her a disservice staying with her. We got to get her off the road. And the tour fell apart halfway through, and my wife was down in Nice with her family, so when we got to Paris, I just left. I said, okay, I'm out of here too. And went down and had a little family time with my wife's family, and then we came home. That was that. And then I didn't hear from her for years until I found out she'd become a cult following.
Well, this record stands I mean, by the way, was Garth playing organ on that Studios track? Or do you remember who was playing organ? It was some of the most authoritative organ stuff I've ever heard in my life.
I don't know. It could have been Paul McCartney, Pat Below. I don't really remember. I have done some organ stuff. I don't know. It's not a pleasant credit.
Seiwell, I want you to move to a different. I don't want to lose anything we're saying. You're going through a rough patch with the cell phone, so you need to find a new little patch there. Okay, there you go. That's the spirits are talking. We nobody is going to ever know who played organ on that session, so it's not a big deal.
Right? Yeah. It could have been.
Yeah.
I think I said Pat Rebelo or Paul Griffin.
Sure. Well, I mean,
one of those could have been Garth. I don't know.
You know what I mean? I got, it was going back to Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania, the blues. I mean, why was there no, why did you not get exposed to bebop?
Oh, it just wasn't around then. I mean, I lived up in the country, I lived next to Jim Thorpe in a small town called Lehighton, a mile square, 7,000 people. There was just no culture there. It was Pennsylvania Dutch.
Right, okay.
People were listening to Lawrence Wilk and Glenn Miller.
It was a champagne music, but it was because what happened next, I mean, like I told you, I'm doing this. I just slept at Stan Getz's Irvington estate about a month ago and did his second wife is still alive, and I was in the room, the circular room where Joao Gilberto and they created that 2-beat rhythm for The Girl from Ipanema. And I'm looking here and I'm like, it blew my mind yesterday. One of my favorite albums is this Stanley Turrentine with Astrud Gilberto. And had you played, was that just a call you got? That was like Saivuka and Bob Mann. All these cats.
Yeah.
I never knew you played drums on it. How did that? But again, you had the earlier exposure from being in the Navy, getting those Brazilian rhythms.
Well, actually, I don't know if we did that album before or after. I worked with Astrud. I got a call to, and that's where I met Ayrto. We were both the drummers with Astrud, with Benny Arnoff, and he played keyboards.
You did double. Hold on. Can you explain how the heck? This is so important because double drums with Ayrto and you. How did you guys?
Well, Ayrto played percussion. He was playing all his shakers. His
sure.
Kashish. What are they called?
Yeah, no. Kashiki. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Cuica.
I was the drummer, and we played the Rainbow Grill for, I think it was a month that Astrud appeared there. I'm not sure.
The Rainbow Grill. How badass is that? That's 71. This thing was slick, and I mean, there was some serious. This was the most burning stuff ever. Well, the album, Gilberto and Turrentine and Seiwell. I had no idea you played drums on this. It's so ridiculous because there's a huge big band.
Well, in 1970, we did a tour with Astrud of Japan. We were there for Expo 70, and she was the biggest star in Japan. And that tour, I'm not sure if Ayrto was on that. I don't think so, but he had other commitments, maybe with Miles at the time. But it was Charlie Mariano.
Sure.
Art Koenig on bass, Benny Arnoff, Paul Metzke on guitar, and me. And we did a month of Japan, which was amazing. I got very close. The band was great. It was just, we played beautiful theaters and real nice venues. Had a wonderful, wonderful time. and it's probably we did a couple other gigs in the U.S. after that, and that was a beginning where that's where that record came from. It must have happened right after that tour.
And you were still basking in. You hadn't totally transitioned into the world of McCartney at that point, but I guess what I'm curious about is how you learned, or if there was. You were going to tell that Elvin story, but the thing about Elvin, Charlie Neville told me that when he went down to play these chicken and waffle houses with Coltrane, he'd put nails in the floor. He'd bang nails into the floor to make sure that his bass drum wouldn't move.
We all did.
You all did. And you know what I'm trying to get at is that what I hear today when I go see a lot of music is, and I'm a Gen Xer, and I'm talking about younger cats. Like, I just hear this pulsating double bass drum, boom, 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 as opposed to, and I'm talking more like Kenny Clark and maybe cats like, there's so many of them. But, I'm just trying to figure out, like, if there was a time when you learned, talking to people worldwide, about how you kept time on the cymbals and how you maybe use the bass drum for rebound, because dynamics are missing in modern music today, especially in the live context. And I wasn't sure if there was a time you could point to when you were really dancing on the cymbals.
Well, no, that's always been the case, though. With early on when I was playing with Alan Zuten, and you made the time swing from the top. You didn't make it swing from the bass drum, And the ride cymbal, I remember Jake Hanna coming into Half Note one night to hear me play, and Jake did not pay young drummers any compliments. Salty old devil. And Jake came up to me and said, "Hey kid, I really like the way you play the ride cymbal." Well, that was it. The accents came from the snare drum, and then every once in a while bass drum would come in there. But you kept the time with the between the hi-hat and the ride cymbal, and that's where that came from, and that's where dynamics came from,
And what was the Elvin Jones story?
Well, Elvin used to teach up at Pro Drum, and when I became like the hot guy in town there for a couple of years in New York, I would go up there and get stuff that I needed, and I'd always see Elvin up there, and he knew that I was burning and stuff. But I should digress. I digress, but it was before that, actually. I was a new kid. I heard that he was playing across from the Half Note was a place called Pookie's Pub, and I was still living up in the Poconos, I think. So I heard that Elvin's group, he had Frank Foster, Jimmy Garrison, and McCoy Tyner, and they're playing in this club across from the Half Note. So we drive into the city, my wife and I, and the place is empty. It's empty. Elvin Jones. So I walk in, we spend a few dollars that we have and get a beer or something and just sit there, and they're playing their ass. I mean, I'm like freaking out. This is like so good. First time I'd ever seen him play. And the place is empty. He finishes the set, and he comes off stage, and they go get a drink, and I go over and I say, "Hey man, I'm just your biggest fan." We talked for a minute. He was very sweet, and I said, "Hey man, nobody's here. Could I sit in?"
I love it.
What did I just say that?
Well, I mean, I know he said yes.
He did. He did. So the next set they play a tune, and he takes a drum solo on it. I mean, the wallpaper was peeling off the walls. It was so hot. It was amazing. He goes, "Here you go, kid," and he hands me the sticks. And I got up and I played a tune with the band, and everybody's, "Yeah, nice, man," So Elvin, he grabs me out. They take a break, and Elvin and I are out front just smoking a joint, actually. And he's throwing me up in the air and say, "Hey, you mother," he's just we're having a good time, he's throwing me up in the air. "You can play, motherfucker," And now we see this bum come walking down the street. This guy's really looking dangerous, Somebody's walking down the street towards us, and I thought, I'm glad I'm with Elvin. He's bigger than I am. If we're not going to get mugged, but this guy looks like he's going to hurt us. the guy gets closer, and Elvin turns to the guy and he says, "Hey, come here! I want you to meet this white motherfucker that can play the drum."
Oh man.
Denny. Elvin says, "Denny, meet Art Blakey."
What?
Mm-hmm.
Now
Yeah,
he just
that's how-
from a distance he looked like a bum, or he actually was really scuffling.
Yeah, he was scuffling. It was one of those time periods. That's how I met Art Blakey.
Did you see your friends becoming roadkill because of drugs, and you had to make a conscious decision to? It was so prevalent back then. I'm not talking about psychedelics. I'm talking, smack and that. But I mean, can you talk about how you are still here today? I remember talking to Michael Shreve, who was on that infamous Dalton tour, and he was he just was like, I mean, he was watching those people fall away in San Francisco left and right, and so he turned to what wound up being Sri Chinmoy, getting a sort of. Larry Coryell did it to a degree, although he struggled until Wayne and Herbie got him into Buddhism. But I mean, anyway, I just like to talk about your evolution as to how you gained that higher state of consciousness without the drugs.
Well, I mean, I did my share of them, but one of my favorite musicians and drummers of all times was a guy named Donald McDonald.
Dude, Donald McDonald used to sit with Jeremy Steig, would do paintings on and with Warren was it Warren
Bernhardt.
They were playing loop. They were doing looping before looping was even around. I mean, this was insane. They most badass people in the world. Go ahead though.
Yeah. Well, Donald was he did so much of everything, and it was injected into his veins, and yet he still played like a. I remember holding the door for him. We were at a fancy East Side party where Mike Veneri and those guys, Joe Beck and all those guys were playing. And they just took me along, and I got my big foot on a door of a bathroom while Donald shoots up in the bathroom,
Right.
And he's slamming this needle into his arm, and the blood's dripping off his elbow. And I said, "Man, do you have to do that, Donald?" He says, "Yeah, man, it makes music so much better." And that turned me away right there. So I never got involved any further than just having an occasional joint or an occasional line or something, But,
yeah, I mean, marijuana's. We're talking about lethal. I mean, that's what Getz did too. I remember Buell Neidlinger, like they were on this Jersey Turnpike, and they're all in the bathroom. I think the Mercurial Stan Levy was on drums or something, and they were all just like shooting up in the bathroom, and Buell, like they're nodding off, and Buell sort of opens his eyes and Stan's like, "Can I get the rest of yours, man?" It was like really It was just carnage, and you're talking about.
Yeah.
Now I don't want to get confused with the drum. The Elvins. You digress to the gig at Pookie's Pub, but and then Blakey was just kind of bumming around. But then was there another story at the place he was working at? Like the drum world, drum world. Or?
Yeah. He used to teach up at Pro Drum. He used to teach. He and Papa Joe Jones would be there, and sometimes Tony Williams would even come by. Lenny Castro worked after school when he was 13. So every time I'd see Elvin, in those days we were doing so much studio work that we used to do a little blow. We used to have a little bottle with us just to keep us awake to get to the next gig.
Sure.
Kind of deal, because we'd work sometimes 18 hours in a day, and so every time I'd see Elvin, he'd look at me and say, "Hey, you got any?"
I love
many years later, he came out here to L.A. and he did a drum clinic, and I hadn't seen him in many years, and he looks right at me and goes, "You got any?"
Well, I mean that guy could consume. I mean, he was on fire. I want to read you this quote from Di Meola of my second interview. He said, "Steve Gadd has an amazing inner metronome. His feel on even the most simplest drum groove is for some reason better than almost anyone." He said, "I remember making his third record, and those were heavy drug and alcohol periods for a lot of those session guys. They were working so much, and it was an era of a lot of really bad stuff. We had to pick Steve up from the chair in the control room, just pick him up. His head was to the side, just completely dead. We didn't even know if he was going to be able to sit on a stool without falling off. He had my chart that I had written out for him. He liked to tape the charts to his cymbal stands as opposed to having them on a music stand where he's looking to the side. I count this thing off. It happened to be Egyptian Danza and the Casino Suite, and oh my God, it was locked solid without a click track. Everybody was completely blown away. That was the same guy we put on the drum chair. I mean, it really was, so you made a conscious effort. You saw people. It's amazing to me. I mean, I talked to Gad about it, and, you talk about a guy who literally almost lost everything. But I just feel like, and sometimes too, I mean, did you pivot out to what would be considered mainstream music, pop music, because you were tired of being a starving genius? I remember Schwartzberg talking about working at the Half Note with Lou Tabakin for like $12 a week, and he's like, I just can't keep doing that. I'm broke. Did you get to a point where you made a conscious decision for your family to move into mainstream music?
Well, I was making $100 a week at the Half Note, and as soon as the studio dates started coming in, and I made a living from jingles and whatever they called me for, record albums, whatever. As soon as I made enough money that I could get out of the Half Note gig, excuse me, I said, yeah, I got to do this now because it's more lucrative. I can pay my bills. I don't have to, it was tough living on $100 a week. And you would eat up and drink up $30 of that down there. You get a couple of meatball sandwiches and a couple of drinks a night. $30 out of your $100 is gone, man. Frank and Sonny Cantarino and the boys, they kept track of everything you ate and drank.
Well, no, I mean, that was the other thing. Charlie Musselwhite in Chicago, that was the other part of it, is that the Mafia ran all these clubs. Is that right? I mean, John Hendricks, the late, great John Hendricks, said without the Sicilians, there would have been no jazz in America.
Probably right. Yeah. I don't think Mike and Sonny were involved with the boys. I don't think they were. They just had an Italian name. Well, they probably got their liquor from the boys and stuff like that.
Well,
that wasn't a pop joint.
No, we got a game on this program called Name That Voice. I want you to listen to this voice and the context, and then we'll break it down.
Okay.
The second L, I wanted you to talk about love, the way you, what do you consider love, and how you bring love to people in your life.
Oh boy, that's a good one. I love that.
You got in 3 minutes.
Well,
in 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, love to me is what makes everything go around. I think that love created the universe. I think that
Jim Keltner.
If you say you do not believe
listen to the
in
context.
God, you're an atheist or whatever, I respect that. I think we all need to respect how each other feels about things in life. But for you to say that you don't believe in God, and if you have a little daughter or a little son, and you look in their eyes, you can't tell me that you don't believe in love.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, God is love. So I don't think I need to go any further with that.
All right, well, you got it, Jimmy Keltner, talking about love. We've done several interviews, and I wanted you to talk.
My dear friend.
When did you first connect with Keltner? Was it because he was on tour with roughly around the time you synced up with McCartney was when he was working with Harrison.
Yeah. Well, I met Jim out here in L.A. at Shelley's Manhole. He was playing with Gabor Szabo.
Oh, I love it, dude. And Albert Stinson.
Yep. And later I would do Gabor's work when he came to New York, and then I did some work with him out here on the West Coast too. Maybe Jim wasn't available, but we went up to San Francisco and played the El Matador, the jazz club up in San Francisco. And
you are blowing my mind. And the Both And Club or something?
No, it was called called El Matador, across the street from the Jazz Workshop.
So Jim, you knew Jim as a jazz fanatic drummer.
Well, let me tell you, this is the first time I heard Jimmy play. He was playing at Shelley's Manhole with, I think it was with Gabor, and he had a standard set of drums there, but no head on the front bass drum.
Wow.
Which was unheard of. It was totally off the charts.
Can you just explain to regular people, non-musicians, why that would be unheard of?
Well, because in jazz vernacular anyway, the bass drum is like a tom-tom, a lower-sounding tom-tom that usually went boom. And when pop started coming in, they started taking the front head off the bass drum because these engineers didn't know how to record. So they would throw blankets and towels and stuff in there so it went back. It sounded like hitting a dead piece of meat.
You're nailing this. Okay, this is so important. Go ahead.
So here's Jimmy Keltner, and he's playing musically, and he's got a dead bass drum. He's got no front head on it, and he's got some stuffing in there, and it sounds musical, and it blew my mind. Jimmy was always a creator, and he's always way ahead of everything else. Right now, he's back to playing. He will not record without both heads on the bass drum and no padding in it. So it's an actual tone chamber. Bam,
God, this is so. I mean, you were at Shelley's too, because Keltner. I've done 3 interviews, and he was like, he used to play with Bobby Hutcherson and Woody Shaw and John Handy.
Yeah.
I mean, did you have, when you were out on the West, did you get a chance to play with some of the jazzers on the West Coast, or anyone like Billy? You ever played like double drums with Billy Higgins or anyone like that?
No. Billy Higgins I met in Barcelona, Spain, actually. He was playing with Tete Montague.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable.
And I was in the Navy, and I sat in with on Billy's kit with Tete, and also with an old organ player who Jimmy Smith got his shit from, a guy from Baltimore named Lou Bennett. I was like, I was a kid, and anytime I heard, when we got off the ship, we looked for a jazz club, and Booker Irvin, Pointy Poindexter were there. Got to play with them, sit in. They'd always let the Navy kids sit in. I think we had civilian clothes, but yeah, we did, because my wife has a picture. We did our honeymoon in Barcelona. When the ship stopped there, she came down, and we spent 5 days, and we just hung out at the jazz club, and I played with a lot of cats, and yeah, it was great fun. Great fun.
Did you know Kenny Malone at all, the drummer?
Kenny Malone was my teacher in the Navy School of Music.
What I want you, because this guy is a legend, and I want you. I mean, the guy was playing with Boots Randolph and the sickest jazz with Joe Allen. If there was one thing that made him a great teacher, what was it?
Well, everything about him. He was like, I mean, my favorite drummers were Mel Lewis and Elvin Jones.
Right.
Mel for Taste, Elvin for Animal. But Kenny Malone was, before I met those cats, I met Kenny at the school in Washington, D.C. He was faculty there, and I heard him play with the big band. And I said, "This is it. This is what I want to be."
Oh, I love it.
And he was the best drummer I had ever heard to date. And he befriended me, and when he used to let me do his rehearsals with the faculty lab band when he couldn't make it for some reason or other. So he trusted me to go in and play with the faculty. And that was great for me. And then some years later, well, one day I'm walking down the hallway at school, and I hear this ridiculous marimba part, like 6 mallets. And I walk by the rehearsal room, and it's Kenny.
Oh, my God.
And I go in, and I said, "You're playing a 6-mallet marimba piece so beautifully?" He said, "Oh, yeah, I was a mallet major. Drums was secondary to me." I went, "Oh, my God." And then I met him some years later. I was in Nashville doing a record, and I went to hear him play in a club, and we hung out a little bit. Yeah, he's just an unbelievable musician.
What Keltner, I just wanted to as we wrap up set one here, we've been burning for almost 80 minutes already. I just wanted to ask you about, as we move into this time, 2018, new calendar year, but can you talk about your concept of love and how you bring love to this world?
For me, love is service. Love is service to other people. Next week it'll be 27 years for me without a drink or a drug. And what I do now these days is I make my music. I try to be nice to everybody. And if I see somebody that's hurting, I'll go up and give them a little positive thought. And that's my. And like Jimmy Keltner said, I mean, love is God. I mean, I run into people sometimes that say, I don't believe in God. And I said, well, let me just ask you something. Did you ever do something that was really shitty to somebody? They said, yeah, of course. And I said, well, why do you think you felt bad after that? I don't know. Well, maybe that's the God within you, you know. So
I dig.
For me,
I really dig. I dig.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I've gone to I've been in recovery, and I help a lot of musicians come to me when they can't get out of that loop of drinking and drugging, and I'm able to show them what I've learned and how to live without it, and how your lives flourish and get so much better. So, that's my life today, and I've learned how to become a giver rather than a taker, and God takes care of me. It's kind of that simple.
Well, Denny Seiwell, could we do part 2 in a couple weeks in the new year? I just would love to.
Yeah.
I got more to do with you. We got a lot more to cook on. We didn't even get to some of the pop stuff, but I got to tell you, I was touched.
Well, this has been such a pleasure because you brought up so many names that I hadn't thought about in so long, and they meant so much to me in my early years. They keep saying, don't look back, don't look forward, just stay in the moment. But, God, when I look back at those times, they were so awesome, so profound in my life, and how it shaped me musically and shaped me spiritually,
Well, let me tell you, man, this is not about preservation. This is about promotion so that my daughters and future generations understand how real music is made with real human beings. So anything about looking, it's not about, there's nothing nostalgic about it. I wasn't even around for it. And but for me, also, did you play those sober picnics that Bear and those cats would put together? Back in
I did.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the nexus of genius and addiction, and that you've seen absolute titanic human beings succumb to addiction, and they were geniuses. And you're still here, able to testify to the fact that it's a journey to bliss, and you don't need hard drugs to do it. And so,
oh hell no.
Anyway, Seiwell, I had a ball, man.
I'm coming up on 75 years old. I just got a record deal for my jazz trio. It's an organ trio with Joe Bagg and John Cadini.
Oh, Bagg! I got a hang with Bagg, dude. Yeah. He's kicking pedals on that thing.
Oh yeah. Oh. And we just recorded this album. It's going to be released in the early part of the year on QVR Records, Quarto Valley Records, and it's the feather in my cap. It's the pinnacle of my years of, we've been together 6-7 years as a trio now. We don't work that much because the guys are so busy, but this is our second album. I'm so proud of it. We got some serious musical places on this record that I'm so excited about, and it's going to be coming out probably in the spring, both in vinyl and CD, and we don't even have a title for it yet, but just finished recording it, had Al Schmidt mix it for us at Capitol Studios.
Legend.
And it's one of the highlights of my life. And there have been many, actually, but this is really a highlight.
Well, but do me a favor, friend me. I sent you a friend request. Friend me on Facebook, because a lot of these stories are going to be bouncing all over the digital world, because my tentacles are way out, and you're an inspiring cat. It's been an honor to connect with you, Seiwell. Happy New Year. We'll be in touch.
Thanks, Jake.
All right, now. Later on.
Talk real soon.
Real soon. Peace. Bye-bye. just another whistle stop or at the station. Denny Seiwell, legend from the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. And he wound up touring the world with so many cats, but at the core, just a rhythmatist looking to spread love and wisdom. That's it for the Jake Feinberg Show. We're going to be back on Saturday, the final installment of the year of the Jake Feinberg Show. We're really in for a treat. We're going to have an organic quartet in here playing live. And we'll also be joined by great horn player Lou Tabakin. So it's going to be a nice way to end 2017 as we move into 2018. Until then, peace.